We've been talking for some weeks now about how the left has moved from subtle election meddling to brazen election meddling to the point that there's an active campaign right now nationwide to have Donald Trump's name removed from ballots to deprive voters of the ability to even choose him during the election. I mean, it is just so crazy. And now it looks like some anti-Trump forces are beginning to realize that this is this is a little too obvious. So now I'm beginning to see a bunch of headlines. CNN, election officials reject calls to unilaterally block Trump from the ballot using the 14th Amendment, but will defer to courts. What? What's going on here? Let's bring in Joe DiGenova. He's a legal analyst, of course, and a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. Joe, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Vince.
At this point, they're being very obvious about their election meddling, aren't they?
Well, it's been pretty obvious for a long time, but this just puts a cap on it. They've been interfering since the first indictment against Trump in New York by Alvin Bragg, and now the other three indictments, and now these crazy attempts to use the 14th Amendment. It's pretty obvious that the use of the 14th Amendment is actually sanctionable legal action. There's no justification for this. If you apply the same standards that they're using to go after the Trump lawyers, anybody who files an action using the 14th Amendment should be disbarred. I don't believe that's what should happen. But since that's the standard they've now created, this is an outrageous abuse of the legal authority, and anybody who pursues it is not pursuing it in good faith.
Right. Yeah. All sorts of Trump lawyers are fighting to, stay out of jail right now because they gave Trump legal advice. Meanwhile, these guys are all straight up saying that the Constitution should be torn up. I mean, clearly there are massive problems here. But these guys, unfortunately, in today's day and age, Joe, it seems like if you're a lefty legal mind, or even if you're a conservative legal mind, so long as you hate Trump, you can kind of get away with saying anything.
Well, that's pretty much the case. I mean, if you look at the conduct of the judges in the federal court in D.C. and all around the country, Trump has no friends in the legal system. That's one of the most despicable parts of this entire thing is what these people have done to the legal system. The Trumpification of it and the abuse of it to accomplish partisan ends is just really awful. And we're going to pay a dear price for this in the long haul.
How much do they despise the voters? Because it really seems like the only way that you would move to remove someone's name from a ballot is if you had contempt for the voters and their decision making.
Well, there's no doubt that they have contempt for the voters. I mean, this is pretty despicable stuff, no matter how you cut it. This is why we have elections. We're not supposed to be trying to settle things through the courts about who should be on a ballot or who shouldn't with regard to stuff like this. I mean, clearly, if somebody's not an American citizen and they don't have the right to be in the country legally, I mean, you want to, go at it if you want to go after stuff like that. But that's not what this is about. This is about abusing the legal process for purposes of interfering in an election, because it's exactly what they're doing. They are interfering in an election.
Apparently, secretaries of state in places like Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire, and Minnesota are now saying they don't have the power on their own to invoke the 14th Amendment and block Trump from the ballot. I guess they're suggesting that they're going to leave it to the courts to decide. What judge would say that Trump is disqualified from being on a ballot?
Well, there are plenty of them around the country. There are Democrats. There may be some loony Republican state judges. I don't think any federal judge is going to get anywhere near this as long as the House remains in the hands of Republicans, because this might very well be an impeachable offense to misconstrue federal law and the Constitution in such a horrific way.
Yes.
But the bottom line is, in America today, anything is possible, because you know what happens when the Democrats don't like something, they just change the rules. And so that's what they're trying to do now. And look what they just did in the United States Senate. For 200 years, we've had people dressing properly on the floor of the United States Senate. And now, because one nutbag from Pennsylvania doesn't like to wear clothes unless they sort of go around in a gym pants and a hoodie, the United States Senate is now going to look like Fifth and Vine in Philadelphia.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, the QAnon shaman's outfit is now officially a part of the dress code of the United States Senate. That's what Chuck Schumer passed, and
I
slobwear is now allowed.
It's just remarkable. You can do anything if you're a Democrat. And as I said, their rule is if you don't like the rules, just change them. That's not the way you survive as a republic. That's just not the way you do it. But Democrats don't care about that. They care about power. And, you know, I agree with Mark Levin. Democrats hate America. That's why they're doing this. They want to remake it in the image of the Democratic Party. God help us all.
Yeah, and by the way, congrats to Mark. I mean, as usual, #1 bestseller of that book, and it was a #1 bestseller before it was even available.
Before it was available,
It's now available today. Actually, I'm holding it in my hand. The Democrat Party hates America. We'll be talking to Mark about that soon. So thank you for mentioning that. You know, this is. It is amazing to watch these Democrats, you know, just brazenly, constantly meddling in our election system. Is it possible for anybody who has actual power in this country to ever step up and say, enough, stop it? Like, and what I mean by that is specifically the United States Supreme Court. You know, as these guys contemplate removing Trump from ballots on the basis of no criminal conviction, nothing, just literally nothing, just political hatred. Can the Supreme Court step in and say enough?
If they get a case, they should. But you know, they ignored the great case that Texas filed against the other one other state. I can't remember it right now, but I mean, there were some great cases the Supreme Court could have taken up over the last election,
right,
but it stayed out of it. The only way they're going to get involved in any election is it's way in advance of the election itself. I can't see the Supreme Court getting involved in an election anymore after the election, unless it's, you know, like Florida in 2000. You know, it's going to be tough because they've been pummeled by Schumer and the Democrats, and they're worried about the integrity of the court, and they don't want to overstep their role and all of that.
Yes.
Once you get them thinking like that, then you've won. The Democrats have won. Of course, they should be interceding in these cases. They should have taken the Texas case. They should have ruled on it. Even if they were going to rule against Texas, they should have taken the case. They decided not to do it, and that was a mistake on their part, because what they've done is they've invited this type of activity by not stepping in and slapping stuff down when they have the opportunity to do so.
And if they don't step in, it makes it all the easier to actually rig the election, because if Michigan, for instance, decides, yeah, we're going to take Trump off the ballot, that's 15 electoral votes that just disappear. Trump has no chance of getting them. And at this moment, Joe DiGenova, this election looks like it's slated to be another nail-biter. 15 electoral votes is likely to make all the difference in the world. You know, the Supreme Court, if it cares about the country, should step up.
Well, they're going to have to intervene in situations. If cases get to them about his name being on the ballot, they will have no choice but to get involved, because if they don't, it'll be on them. It won't be on anybody else. They will have cowed to the left. They will have cowed to Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the court. You listen to me, Kavanaugh. You listen to me, Gorsuch. He should have been disbarred. He's a member of the New York bar, but apparently he's more concerned about the dress code in the Senate than the decorum on the steps of the Supreme Court. No, the court will have to step in if there are cases, if any cases make it to them involving whether or not Trump's on the ballot.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you feel good about the election landscape or not right now. Clearly, you know that the left is constantly trying to meddle, as we've been talking about this throughout. Do you think we're in an improved position now than we were in 2020?
Hard to tell, because I don't know what kind of ground game the Republican National Committee has and state Republican parties all over the country. One of the things that hurt us very badly in 2022 was we had lousy state legislatures. Republican state legislators were cowards. They didn't want to do things. They were afraid to take action. The same thing in 2020. So 2022 was an example of bad ground game. I don't know what's been done to make up for that. If you're going to rely on highly paid consultants to advise you on how to message, you're going to lose.
Yes.
Because this is about turnout. This is about pure turnout. This is about getting voters. This is about voter harvesting of ballots. It's about mail-in ballots. It's voting early. And the Republican Party is either going to, this is the last clear chance. I mean, if we lose this election and lose the Senate and the House and the presidency, the Republican Party will be moribund for 20 years at least.
I'm worried that lessons haven't been meaningfully learned. I know, like, my friend Hans von Spakovsky has pointed out to me many times. We talked about a lot of this. There have been state laws that have been changed. Places like Georgia and Texas, they've definitely improved their elections. That's all well and good. Those are great things. But at the national level, the RNC, I'm concerned about not enough movement and also Ronna McDaniel's leadership there because. For instance, just to give you an example of something that's not specifically election related, but these primary debates, we were told, what was it, a year ago, Corey? We were told that these primary debates would be handled by conservative media, that it would be conservative media figures who would be conducting the debates among people all trying to compete to become the Republican nominee. Now, obviously, Trump is sitting this out, but I don't think that changes the predicate here, which is that conservatives should be asking these questions. And last week, they announced NBC is hosting the third debate. So what is the likeliness that they're changing anything else if they're sticking with the status quo of the debate process?
I don't understand the selection of NBC. I mean, if you watch Kristen Welker's interview of Donald Trump, I mean, she's dumb, she's arrogant, she's obviously anti-Trump,
and she's scared.
Obviously a lefty.
She's scared too.
Sure, and she's not smart enough to know, and she has no historical background. For example, I've always said to myself, it would be so much fun to be in one of those interviews and just talk to her and say, well, what did you think of Dien Bien Phu? And she probably would think you're talking about a Chinese meal. Instead of the 1954 defeat of the French army in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. I always thought the greatest question to ask Hillary Clinton when she was running for president was, what'd you think of Tony Lazzari's year this year with the Yankees? Mm-hmm. Of course, he was from the 1930s. She would have said, oh, I thought it was great. I thought he's spectacular. Yeah. She would have done what she always does. She lies. Yeah. Kristen Welker is the same way. She thinks because she's good looking, she works for NBC, she gets paid a lot of money, and she can construct a compound sentence that she's smart. She isn't. She's historically ignorant. She got all the facts wrong, for example, on the Democratic Party's position on abortion after birth.
Yes.
Up until birth and after birth. She was wrong. She was just absolutely wrong, and she kept denying it. Now, if you're at NBC and you're a suit or a skirt, whoever runs NBC these days, it's hard to tell. You sit down with her and say, hey, you know what, Kristen? You really got to bone up a little bit on this stuff because you made a fool of yourself with the president. He was right and you were wrong.
Totally. Yeah. And it's they're militantly wedded to their ignorance on so many of these things. It's I refuse to even find out what's actually going on here. I'm just going to stick to the party line on this subject.
Hating Trump is a religion. So you can do anything you want, any way you want. But the truth is, they look dumber and dumber over time. So NBC is now going to host the third debate. Now that to me is just stupid. It's just stupid. It should have gone to Newsmax. That's what you do with that. You tell these people to go to hell. It's going to Newsmax.
Yeah, exactly. At least get somebody up there who cares about what these people care about and understands it and can ask real legitimate questions on the subject. And by the way, there is a very interesting debate to be had among those candidates, including if Donald Trump were to participate, although at this point it doesn't make any sense for him to, because every time he declines it, he goes up in the polls anyway, so that's what he's doing this coming week. Yep. He'll be visiting with all of these auto workers who are on strike, a smart move. And he's sort of outmaneuvering everybody to include Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Trump is in a position where his choices are actually few in number, given the number of trials that are coming up. And we have no way of knowing which, and that's the uncontrollable in this entire thing.
Yeah.
How are those going to play out? Basically, 4 simultaneous trials. They can say all they want about this, that, and the other thing in the sequence. The truth is they're simultaneous. They're all happening at the same time, so that he will be tied up from the beginning of the primary season all the way through Election Day and after. And the notion that is not going to have an effect on the American people is stupid.
Yeah, I mean,
First of all, the American people get it. They know what's going on. They understand why these cases have been brought. They have nothing to do with vindicating legitimate interests of the criminal justice system. This is about stopping Donald Trump, just like the gag order that Smith wants against Trump is designed to shut him up so he cannot talk about certain things while he's campaigning.
So totally. And you could be even Kristen Welker and understand the following point, which is that all of the events in question are things that have supposedly happened either in late 2020 or early 2021. Donald Trump is being charged for all of them at this moment. The trials are going to begin at this very specific moment 3 years later, 4 years later. I mean, have you, Joe, in your experience as a prosecutor, when you encountered crimes and then would prosecute people, did you normally wait 3.5 years to bring the charges?
No, because we didn't do things like this, which is one of the reasons, by the way, that I just despise the current United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. I've never said that about anybody in that office. There were some of them who were a little less effective than they should have been. This guy is bad. He is really bad. He's a hack. His name is Matthew Graves. Remember that name, listeners. Matthew Graves. He tries to hide. He doesn't actually go out and seek publicity. He just tries to undermine the entire system by having a woke left-wing agenda, doing everything that Merrick Garland wants, treats the January 6th offenders, all of them, no matter what their role was, like they're all, murderers and that they've committed treason. This guy is a joke as a United States attorney. He's an embarrassment to the office. But that's what we have. All over the United States, there are U.S. attorneys like Matthew Graves. They're just like little chicken littles following the orders from the master. It's
Right.
just unbelievable. They're an embarrassment to federal law enforcement.
And in Matt Graves' case, you experienced this because you were the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. It's a very different job than other U.S. attorneys, right, given its role in prosecuting actual street crime in D.C.
Sure, that's why he's been criticized by the police chief and the mayor for dropping so many cases. Now he turns around and he blames the police department, bad police work, all this. That's a bunch of crap. You sit down and you work with people, you make sure, but he's consumed by January 6th. Remember, the Attorney General and all the people in the department tell us this is the largest single criminal investigation in the history of the department. What a bunch of crap. Why would you waste this much time and energy on those cases? You didn't have to go after these people like this. There were ways to do this in a much less expensive and extensive way. They're trying to make a point. They're trying to stop political dissent. So this guy Graves thinks that that doesn't have an effect on law enforcement and street crime. Of course it does. His office is distracted. They're distracted by a political game. His leadership sucks. He shouldn't be the United States attorney. He's an embarrassment to the office.
Joe, would you come back and help me do some more naming and shaming of this clown? Do you think you can do that soon?
Anytime.
Okay, good. We'll continue this conversation. Thank you very much. Joe DiGenova, as always, appreciate your time, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
It's 4:53 now. See? I swear he drinks a bottle of Tabasco sauce before he begins